Well, hi everybody. I think it's about 1 o'clock. Not sure who's here. Send me a like or post a comment or something, and then I'll know somebody's watching. In the last session, the first session, we talked about building flowers and the way that I design a tray. So today we're just going to continue on with that, and I'm going to add some leaves and some filler flowers, and then we're going to add a layer of color over the entire piece. So leaves. Usually when I'm painting leaves, I kind of have like a round shape in my head. That round shape allows me to keep those leaves nice and plump and healthy looking. Now, that's not to say that you can't do leaves that are long and thin. Of course you can. There are tulip leaves and other leaves that look that way. But for the sake of this painting, round is the thought in my head. So before I paint for you, what I'll do is, hi Mary, what I'll do is I'll add placement for some leaves, and I'll do that by just adding some circles. So it's not a big trick, it's not something that's hard to do. I'm looking at this and I see a space here, for example. You know, if you look at that, so I might put a leaf here, and I might put a leaf here, and over here. And as with the flowers mentioned in the first session, I would probably look for uneven numbers. So I do 1 leaf or 3 leaves or 5 leaves together, something like that. So I'll just add another leaf in here. And as I run around and add leaves, I try and keep the piece kind of balanced. I'll do this, and maybe I'll go over here and over here. Now, that's not to say that I won't add more leaves. In fact, I probably will. I'd probably put some leaves in this area. And then I've got little filler flowers that I want to put on as well. So some things that are important to know about the leaves, besides the fact that I'm thinking round, these leaves will have a vein line. And the vein line is important because, well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, let me talk about the vein line. If you draw a leaf, and let me just show you here quickly. If you draw a leaf and you put a straight vein line in, the leaf is not very pretty. I mean, it doesn't have any shape, and so normally we wouldn't do that. Normally the leaf would have some shape, and the vein could run one way, or the same round leaf, the vein could run the opposite way. And you wouldn't think it would make a difference, but it makes a big difference when you're painting. So on these leaves, for example, I'll just add some veins. So it doesn't matter which way. There's no reason that I curved it this way. I'll curve this one like this. So probably I'll curve this one like this just to make it a little different. And that one maybe that way. And this one this way. And this one this way. So you can see I'm just adding curved veins. The more curve you add to the vein, the fuller the leaf will appear. Now I have this one going this way. That's why I did this one. I did intentionally do that. So there are some leaves already put into my piece, and I could probably add more, but I won't do that right now. I usually start out with a little bit and then work my way around. So I want to talk to you about leaves, because I think leaves are almost harder than flowers to paint. And so let's go back to this shape, which is a circle. Maybe I'll change the color of my chalk here so you can see better. So here's a curved vein, and here's a curved vein. And we'll call this part the stem. That's not working very well. Just a second. We'll go back to this one for a minute. No, it's my board. It's not working. Just a second. We'll call this the stem area over here. And then this will be the end or the tip of the leaf over here. So now you can see my leaf is fairly round. I know where it's coming from. And as with the flowers, we talked about flowers in the first session. Hi, Gisela. We talked about flowers in the first session, and we talked about that spot, that important spot that you're going to paint the strokes to, all your strokes. And knowing where that spot is guides your brush with the strokes. So the same thing with the leaves. The spot that you'll be looking at is the end or the tip of the leaf, and that's going to guide my brush with all my strokes. Depending on the curve of the vein, that kind of tells me which is going to be the light side and which is going to be the dark side. The dark is always to the outside of the curved vein. So on that one, it's this way, and on this one, it's this way. When we start to paint the leaves with color, we'll start with the lightest color first. So, and we'll start on the lightest side of the leaf, which is going to be here and here. So what we're going to do is pull our strokes, and the same with the flowers, towards that spot, and we'll fill in the light side of the leaf, and then we'll come back and fill in the dark side of the leaf. The strokes on the light side of the leaf will move towards the spot this way, and the strokes on the dark side of the leaf will move away from the spot towards the vein line. So on this one, for example, I'd start here, I'd put a stroke towards the spot, another stroke towards the spot, another stroke towards the spot, and then I'd move a stroke away from the spot, and so on, to fill in my leaf. So people do have trouble with this. I try to explain it. I'm not sure why it's difficult, because I guess it just is difficult. Maybe I don't do a good enough job explaining. Hi, Anne. Anne from South Carolina. Been a long time since I was there. So this is how we're going to paint the leaf. Now, again, when I did, just let me find my right brush here. I don't see it, so we'll just use this. When I paint these leaves, the chisel of my brush will be similar to the way it was when I painted the strokes for the flowers, in that the direction of that chisel will either be pointing at the spot or pointing away from the spot, and that's what makes the strokes flow so beautifully, to give the leaves what I call rhythm in the leaves. It makes the leaves flow so much nicer. So this is, I was looking for my flat brush, but I'm not sure what, oh, here it is right here. Hang on. There we go, that's better. So this is folk art, is just white paint. I'll undercoat the leaves similarly to the flowers. Load my brush, we talked about this last week, pulling the paint from the outside edge of the puddle and filling the brush. I even maneuver the hairs, wiggle back and forth to make sure that there's paint, equal amount of paint around every single hair of the brush. So here's my spot on my leaf. There's my spot. This is a big brush and a little leaf. But as an example, the chisel of the brush to start up here by the vein line, and it points. It's in the direction of that spot. The leaves I'm going to do on this piece are leaves that I've taught for years and years, and I think they're the easiest of the leaves because they fill the space, they fill the shape of the leaf quite readily. So pointing my brush, it's a comma-like stroke. Now I say comma-like because I'm going to try not to put a big tail on it. Usually when we have a comma, we try and put a nice tail on the stroke, but here I want to wisp off the stroke. So touch, press, release, and pull towards the spot, but you'll notice I didn't go the whole way. The next stroke would be an S-like stroke. So again, pointing to the spot, and I'd come up in here because there's a little space. Let me load some more paint in my brush. And an S-like stroke is chisel, a little pressure, then a lot of pressure, and then no pressure. And again, I didn't finish it. You know, normally we'd do an S, we'd go pressure in the center, and then we'd come down and we'd try and finish that stroke with a nice fine tail. But on these, we ignore the tails, we wisp off. Again, similarly to what we did, you'll remember up here on the flowers, just wisping and not actually going to the spot, but the eye takes the paint to that spot. So again, pointing to the spot, press, and a bit of an S stroke. Now, I went a little bit too far, but this is just the first step, so it doesn't matter. On the dark side of the leaf, I told you that we were going to pull the strokes away from this spot. So there's my spot, and my chisel now still pointing this spot. I'll start about halfway up the leaf here, halfway up the side edge of the leaf, pointing to the spot. And this is kind of like a C stroke, is chisel, press in the, well, that's not very good, chisel, press in the center, and then chisel. But here, I'm only going to do chisel, press, and wisp off somewhere that would have been maybe the center of a C stroke. So you'll see it here, it's chisel, press, and off. So you see I didn't go all the way around the shape. And on this one, it's only going to take 2 strokes to fill this shape of this leaf because the brush is so big. Again, pointing to that spot, my chisel, a little press, and up to the center of the vein line. So let's do the next leaf. Now, first thing you need to notice is that I turned my board around on this side, and I tried to put the brush so you see what I see. Put the camera. It's right above my my hairline here, so it's you're kind of seeing pretty much what I see. Here, I can see the hairs of the brush. You can see the hairs of the brush, and I pull the strokes towards myself. You see that pulling towards myself. Here, I push or pull the strokes away from myself. Now, if I tried to pull the strokes over here towards myself, you can't see the hairs on the brush, and neither can I, because I have to lean into the brush into the direction of the stroke. So if I turn my piece around and I point my brush to the spot, you can see it there. Point my brush to the spot, and if I touch and press, you can see that I can pull that stroke away from myself. You can see the hairs, and so can I see the hairs. So I know whether or not I'm doing a nice stroke. The next one is going to be an S-like stroke. So again, pointing to the spot, start on the chisel, press, and towards the spot, and one more, and that'll fill in that side of the leaf. On the dark side, well, it's not dark now, but it's going to be when I'm all done, I hope. Again, pointing to the spot, my chisel pointing to the spot, a partial C stroke. So it's chisel, see the little chisel edge, and up and in, and another one. And I'll only take 2 strokes to fill in those leaves. So that's a quick demo on the leaves. Let me just change brushes here and get my filbert brush ready. Always get my brushes ready in water and then remove the water, because with stroke work you want to keep the paint kind of thick. It moves better, it stays better in the brush when it has a heavier consistency. So I'm loading up a filbert brush because that's what I'm going to use for my leaves. And I'll look at what I've got here. I've got one right here. There's my spot, will be down here. And if you're painting, absolutely put the spot in. It'll help to guide you to the right place. You know, you'll be looking at it. It makes it so much easier. So pointing the chisel to the spot, right? I'm going to touch, press. Now, I didn't put much of a tail on that comma stroke, but between you and me, it's darn near perfect for what I'm trying to accomplish here. And I don't know if you can see it or not. Maybe if I hold this up, maybe you'll see better. So I don't know whether you can see it or not, but the hairs right here, because my brush was pointed to the spot when I came off, the hairs of the brush, the paint, actually directs the eye to that end or tip of the leaf. But not fulfilling the stroke and putting a tail on it is a good thing. So the next one was an S stroke. So again, pointing to the spot. An S stroke is chisel, pressure, and again, coming off before finishing the stroke. One more, chisel, press, and just a bit of an S stroke. On the dark side, I'm going to go from the point back in towards the vein line, so opposite direction. My chisel's pointing. I start up about halfway on the leaf, just about where it changes direction here, and it's chisel, press, and then pointing again, chisel, and in, and one more little one, chisel, and in. Now, you'll see that I did not complete those strokes. And what I really want you to see is there's almost like a little hook on the beginning of these strokes, little wee hook on the beginning of the strokes. And that little hook or that little line of paint points to that spot. So it keeps the eye moving around the leaf, always bringing it back to that spot. So quickly, I'll go through and I'll do some more leaves for you. So there's my spot, chisel, press towards the spot, an S-like stroke and off, another small stroke, pointing and up the other side. You'll notice I go to my palette. Oh, I'm not sure if you can see it. I hope you can see it. And I fix the chisel on my brush because you can't get that little hook if there's no chisel. So this one I've got going the same direction. So I'll put my spot there, and there's a comma. And I'm not worried about doing absolutely beautiful strokes at this point. What I'm trying to do is build leaves and flowers, and any correction that needs to be done will be done when I add color, and when I add shadow, and when I do the overstrokes. So again, another leaf here. That one is nice and short. S. S. Just partial strokes. And I'll just keep moving around. We'll put a spot here. I may not pay total attention to the chalk line that I did here. I'll just do what my eye tells me would look better. Again, I can correct. I've got a couple of major steps ahead of me here. And with each one of those, I can correct the shape. I can change the direction. I can do all kinds of things. So these two I've both got going the other way. Let's put a spot. Let's point, touch towards the spot. Again, chisel, press, press, and then up the other side, chisel. There's that little hook. Only 2 strokes filled in that shape nicely. A little spot here. I'm looking at my piece, trying to make sure I don't dip my hands in the white paint. It happens very easily when you're working with a piece that has this rim. Now this one, this little leaf is going to be somewhat underneath that one. It wasn't totally intentional, but that's just the way it turned out. Here's a spot, comma, unfinished, really unfinished for that one. And another one. Now I could leave all of these and just do 1 or 2 leaves for you, but the problem is then putting in the filler flowers and more leaves. We don't know what that's going to be until we get these in. So don't try and overthink your pieces. Do a little bit at a time. That's what I'm doing. And I'll add to the design as I need it. So there's my spot. And now this one is kind of underneath that one as well. Now this one I put the leaf going this way, but in reality, see, now when I look at it painted, I just feel that it really should be this way. It's not right or wrong, either way is fine, but sometimes you just look at things and think maybe it would be better if it was a different way. So let's just get this one in. We'll get the rest in really fast. I've got one more over here. Put the spot here. I think I'll turn this around. Now, I don't know if you can see or not, but I can already see that I'm not liking the shape that the bouquet is taking. I don't like this single leaf over here. You don't like it either, right? So that's pretty easy to fix. I think what I'll do is add a leaf out here, which will kind of, again, I don't want it to be symmetrical, but I do want it to be balanced. And there's a big difference between symmetrical and balanced, right? So I think I'll just put another leaf in here. I'll maybe move that over a bit. And let's see what that looks like. I could still add more later, but for now, I think I'll just put this in here. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger and come back and fill it in. And it kind of left me with a little space in here, which I can tell you I wouldn't leave. I would probably pull just maybe either the end of a leaf. I might have some part of a leaf showing in here. Maybe it's underneath, just to kind of fill that in a bit. So, okay, that's enough with the leaves for a moment. I probably would add more, but for now, that's going to do it. So let's move on to some filler flowers. And again, we talked about flowers in the first session. Let me just grab this. We talked about flowers, and we talked about that spot that you're going to paint the strokes to, which is just below where the real center of the flower is. And when you're working with filler flowers, you can cheat on that a bit, because these flowers aren't really the focal point of your painting. They're what I'm calling them. They fill the space. So I can stick to this rule, or I could just paint flat flowers. And so let's see now what I'll do. Let me talk to you too, before I do that. I've just decided what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do some little 5-stroke flowers. I'll maybe do 2 kinds for you. So 5-stroke flowers. You guys know, I'm sure you've all painted stick people, right? So there's the head, and there's the body, and there's the arms, and there's the legs. So if you think about that while you're painting your 5-stroke flowers, it's immensely helpful. So the first stroke we'll paint is the head. And then we'll paint, or I should say maybe petal, because I might do more than 1 stroke for the head. So let's call it the first petal will be where your head is. The second petal will be where the raised arms are. Now this is where people kind of get into trouble. Don't draw your stick man with his arms straight across. His arms are raised. So when you put your petal in, it'll be head, arms raised, and legs apart. And that will give you the shape of the flower instead of doing it with head here, this to the side, and then you've got two petals here. This keeps it a little bit more, a little bit better spread out. So having said that, I think I'll draw, just for your sake, not for mine. In here, I think I'll just do some little flowers will fit in here nicely. Like so. And over in here, I'll probably do, I can match that up with some other little flowers. And so I'll put some over here. And then maybe in here, I'll do bigger flowers. What do you think? So here, because there's room, right? And maybe I'll do, that's only two, isn't it? So what I'll do is I'll tuck one in behind each of these. And I'm going to turn my tray around so I can see what's happening here as far as balance goes. So what I'll do maybe is just put this one tucked in over here. So having done that, let's look at the bigger ones first. And let me, again, to help you out, if this is going to be, let's say this is the center of those flowers, the center would be here. So my spot would be below the center and facing the inside. My stems will all be facing the center of the tray. So my spot will be here and here and here and here. So I think what I'll do on the bigger flowers is they'll be 5-petaled flowers, but the petals will be a little bit bigger. So I'll use 2 strokes. This one I think I'll do like a C stroke towards the spot and maybe another one. And that'll form the first petal. Then I'll do an S towards the spot and finish it off with a comma, which gives me a fair-sized petal. And over here, and you can see that these are growing and taking over the pencil marks that I put in, but that's okay. In the back, I'm just going to pull flat strokes, maybe a couple here and a couple here, and that will give me my head, my 2 arms, and my 2 legs. So for the petal in behind, maybe I better do this one first. So let's do this one. So I'll start with the middle again. So I'll pull a couple of C strokes. There we go. Now I can't see the right hand side of this, so I'll just go to the other side of the flower and I'll paint that in. And then I'll paint in, again I can't see this petal, the matching one. I'll paint in this first. That's the 1 petal. So guess what? I only have 3 petals that I can see here. On the one that's in behind, I think I'll just paint the back petals. So there's 1 and there's 2. And you can see how, I'll hold that up a little closer so you can see the flowers. So I'll go over here and now I'm going to as quickly as I can so you don't spend all day having to watch me and listen to me. So here's my little C's. There's a little S, a comma, and you'll notice that my strokes are not, they're far from perfect, especially today. I want to reassure some of you that some days, gosh, I really feel like I paint well. And other days, honestly, you'd think I'd never painted anything before. So we all have good days and we all have bad days, and with stroke work, it seems that the difference between those good and bad days maybe is a little bit more obvious. So today's not a great day for me for stroke work, but it doesn't matter because, as I mentioned earlier, I've got other steps that will go in here. You'll notice this one I only got 4 petals in, and again on this one I'll just pull in a couple of petals, implying that there's a flower back there. Okay, I've got 3 more flowers like that, and then we'll do some little flowers. Here's my spot. You'll notice the spot's always the closest, the bottom front of the flower is the closest to the center, so I'm not worried about that leaf. At some point, one of these things is going to be under the other, and I'm not exactly sure which is which at this point, and I don't worry about it until I actually get to that stage. Now, this one that I just did, maybe I don't know if you can see it or not, but I didn't leave really a lot of space between these 2 groupings, and I'll fix that with the shadow, but normally I would like to see more space. So on this one, I really wouldn't be able to see a pair of C's on the bottom of this flower, so I'll just start with the side petals, and then I'll put in one of the back petals. And these I'll leave apart so you can see what I'm talking about. So you can see I left a nice space between those. So you only see 3 petals on this. And again, for this petal that's underneath, I'll just pull a couple of pairs. Hi, Carolyn. And I can only see part of that petal. So it's starting to fill up nicely. You can see I've got kind of a blank space over here, but that's going to be accommodated by some little flowers, and I'll do those now. So I've just changed brush sizes just for your interest. I don't pay a lot of attention to brushes, but this is a size 10 filbert, and this one that I just picked up is an 8. And I use these brushes with oils and acrylic, so I'm always cleaning them, and my brushes are old, but sometimes I don't get all the oil out, and I usually know that pretty quickly once I start to work with acrylics again, in that the strokes are less than what I would like them to be. So here we go. I'm going to fill this brush up, and it's just a new brush. Not a new brush, but new. It's the new one for today, using it. And I can tell you that when I got it ready in water, there was too much water in the brush, so I'm going to squeeze more out because I want my paint to be, you know, a fairly thick consistency. A runny consistency is absolutely no good for stroke work. So if you're used to putting a lot of water in your brush and wondering why your strokes don't look full, they don't look voluptuous, it's because there's too much water in the brush. So these little, I'm just going to put in some little 5-stroke flowers here. And let me see now, what will I do? I could do single strokes, or I could do little double strokes. Let me see now. So there's the center of my flower. I think what I'm going to do is, oh, I'll just do easy ones. Let's keep it simple. So there's my head, and there's an arm, and I can't see the other arm, and there would be the 2 legs. So that puts in a little flower. I've got another one over here. Let's do a head, 1 arm, and again, I can't see the other arm. There's the 2 legs. And I probably would just pull a little stroke here to imply that there's a flower there. Here's the head, a raised arm, 1 of the legs. Here's the other leg, and I don't see the other arm. So let's move this around real quick. And I'll do head, arm raised, arm raised. Now, it's always easier to do a full flower and then tuck the other ones in afterwards, rather than try and do partial flowers and then come back and do your full flower. So here I'll put a head and an arm, and then I'll just put the 2 legs in because I don't see the other petal that would be there. And here I'll just put maybe the 2 legs at the back and leave it at that. And I could actually pull A couple of little buds out here might be nice, which would mean I probably should pull some. Where did I do those others? Over here. Maybe I'll pull a couple of little buds here, maybe just like that. And then I'll go over to this. Over here, there's a head and an arm and an arm and a leg and a leg. And we can get a full one here, head, arm, arm, leg, leg. And just let me look at this for a minute, see what's happening. Okay, we're okay still. I can get another full one in here. And then I'll just put maybe a partial one here. And I might put a couple of buds. Now, I'm looking at this and I see this big blank space over here, which I want to fill in. And I have these larger flowers here, these larger petals. So I could either put some green in here and call it a leaf that's under everything, or I could add just what I'm going to do, and that looks like a little petal, and that will be a flower that's underneath. Now, this looks like it needs more on this side. If you look at this, it's pretty unbalanced. I also want to fill a little something in here. So here's where we'll put, and I think I'll go back to my bigger brush. I love painting with big brushes. I really don't like painting with little brushes. You can paint so much faster with a bigger brush. So let's fill in this little gap first. So this will be just what we'll call a two-stroke leaf. And they almost look like circles. So I'll just pull that out like that. And I'll start to shape my bouquet. You can see now that kind of is oval over here. I'll start to shape the bouquet. Let me do it this way for a minute. So I need something more in here. And I think what I'll do is one larger leaf. So we'll put that in. There's my spot. A great way to tell whether your painting is balanced or not is to take a picture of it. It's amazing what the eye doesn't see that the camera does. So let me just put a little one-stroke leaf maybe in here. Not really one stroke. There'll be one stroke in the final step. And I'll put... So these are just little, almost like C strokes. And are we getting anywhere? It's still a little light over here, isn't it? Light in weight is what I'm meaning. Let's do this. For some reason, it looks like my focus isn't right. Hang on. There we go. Now I might change this as we move along. I may add more little flowers to the piece. I probably will, and fill in this area over here because it looks pretty unbalanced at the moment. Maybe I'll put a couple in right now, just while we're talking about it. I'll just use those little flat flowers. There's one. Does that look better? Somewhat. We'll put another one over here. So when I put my color on, you'll really start to see whether or not the piece is balanced. So I can see right now I need to do some work in here, but I'm not going to take up time at the moment. I'm going to clean out my brush and talk to you about color. And I pulled color before doing this, and I want to tell you that there was absolutely really no rhyme nor reason for pulling the colors I did. I'm not thinking about color theory. I'm not thinking about the color wheel. I'm just wanting to add some color. And at this stage, I'll use that color to correct the shapes. And hi, Shirley. I'll use it to correct the shapes. And I'll also when I get it on, it'll really help me to see where I need to add or subtract leaves or flowers. Maybe I've got too heavy on one side. The color really helps to balance that out. I chose colors. I chose several colors, all different from each other. So what I have is a rainbow here. I've got blues and yellows and pinks, which would be my red family. And I've got 2 shades of green. I've got a yellow green and a blue green. Yes, you can use both together in the same place. So I'll start again with my major flowers that we painted last week. And I think I'll pick, there's some pink. And these colors could be lighter, they could be darker. And when I get to the final stage, I may change the color. So if you're at a stage like this and you're not sure about color, don't worry about it. Just go ahead, get it done, and worry about it later. Now, if you were studying with me, some of my students, I know there's at least one watching, will tell you that I make them go over all of the strokes again and building the leaves and flowers to put the color on. But I'm not, again, going to do that because I kind of know how to do the strokes, and you can learn how to do the strokes and how to build the flowers by watching the video over and over again. So I'm going to use a large brush, and I'm just going to get some color in place. Getting paint all over the place here. Hang on, I'll wash my hands. So I'm going to pick this blue color, and I'm just going to grab a big brush, and I'm going to fill in the shape of that first flower that I put on. Now, my goal here is to get rid of the white. That's really all I'm doing, is getting rid of the white, because we're going to move to oils, and for sure I don't want any white color showing through. I'd be okay if there's a blue or pink or any other color showing. So that was pretty fast. And there's blue. You'll notice I didn't make it too opaque. This is a raw sienna color. These are folk art colors, plaid. I think I'll do this one over here. Some of the colors are less opaque than the others. And often I'll use the color to correct the shape of a flower if I pulled the strokes in and I'm not crazy about what I did, which happens fairly regularly. I just use the color to change the shape. And you'll notice I'm not too worried about going into the black. That's okay. But there's some color there. I'll choose the pink for the next one. The more opaque the color, is fine. It's nicer if you were doing this in oils, you'd have the luxury of using transparent colors, more transparent than what you find with acrylic paint. And you maybe get a little nicer look, but really you're not going to know the difference by the time I'm done. So there's 3 colors on. Let me put some yellow on my palette. This is just a medium yellow. And what else have I got here? This is a purpley kind of tone. They call this violet pansy. Very pretty color. I'll put some of that out. So I think the big flowers, these big 5-stroke flowers that I did, I'll do in the medium yellow. So again, you'll see I'm just covering the white. That was going to be a petal in there, remember? Or do you remember? And as I get more color on, I'll start to see whether or not my painting is going to look at least a little balanced. Again, not symmetrical. There's a big difference between symmetrical and balanced. But there's some yellow there. And I'll pull some yellow in over here. Now when I get to the oil stage, if I don't like the colors, I'll just change them. I'll just put whatever I want on top of these other colors. So there's some color there. And I'll try and get all that yellow out of my brush so I can move to this violet kind of color, and that's all of these little flowers. So I'll just use the edge of my brush, which I don't like to do because it plays with the shape of the brush, but for the sake of today and getting this done, I think those were going to be little buds. And I've got some over here. I think that's what that was. And that's another one up there. And I think there's one over here. And up here. Okay, I think that takes care of the color. Leaves. I'll do some blue-green and I'll do some with a yellow-green. This is teal, so that's going to be my blue-green color. And so here's a blue-green leaf. Again, when I get to the oil color, I may change this. And the way I choose which color is which is I go yellow-green, blue-green, so the next one's yellow-green, so the next one's blue-green, and so on. So just, again, it's not difficult to make the choice. When this is all done and we get the border on, I've got 3 flowers here, so I'll probably do this one in the blue-green. When this is all done, I will provide a pattern for you and a list of the colors that I used. And then that way, I'm just switching to my yellow-green here. That way, if you think you might want to try this, you can. There's another leaf under here, and I'm going to make that blue-green. That's just the impression of a leaf. Let's see now. So here's another leaf. This one will be yellow-green as well because that's my dog. That noise you hear, if you can hear it, is my dog scratching into the carpet. She's trying to nest. And thankfully they haven't started to bark at the squirrels yet while I'm doing this because it's pretty distracting. I had to close the curtains so they couldn't see outside because with spring coming, the doves have arrived and the squirrels are pretty active and the dogs get a little crazy. So again, my focus for some reason, not sure why that's happening. Just let me pull this down a bit. That's right, Gisela. This would be great to try and freehand. If you watch the videos from the beginning, it's definitely possible. I know, Gisela, you can do it, that's for sure. I don't know why my screen looks fuzzy, and it probably looks fuzzy to you too. I'm not quite sure why that is. Just let me point this away for a minute. It doesn't seem to want to focus on the piece. Not quite sure why. I think I'll do these little ones in a blue-green color. Usually if I add the little leaves, I do them all the same color. I don't try and switch between colors. So these will be blue-green. This one up here is going to be blue-green. I got some white in that paint, which I didn't mean to do. And so there's my color. Now, I don't know if you're seeing this as blurry. It's blurry on my monitor, and I don't understand why. If I put my hand in, it will focus once I get up to the top, but for some reason it doesn't want to focus. I have no idea why all of a sudden it does that, but no, it doesn't seem to want to go. Just give me a moment. Technical difficulties. No, it doesn't. So, there, for some reason. Now it's fine. So hopefully it'll stay that way for a few minutes. Okay, so if you look at this, I've got a bunch of color on here. It looks like, to me, let me turn this around, because sometimes when you look at it from the other side it looks fine. But it looks like I need a little something out here, would you say? I would say. And maybe a little bit more something on the other side. So let me just turn this around again, and let me grab some white, and let me just pull what's going to be a leaf, the end of a leaf shape. Now, I didn't worry about the strokes. All I've done is kind of put a leaf shape in here, and that will help that side of it a little. And I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to put another leaf over here. So I'll just pull a leaf in here. Let's see if that is going to help a bit. Well, it helped a bit, but not enough. So what I'm going to do is put another partial leaf in here. And again, I'm just going to rough in as if the leaf is underneath. And then over here, I think I'll just maybe put in another leaf as if it's underneath. And now it's a little bit better. When I add the color, I might put a little bud stroke there. So when you put your white on and you go to add color, make sure that the white is dry before you put the color down. So I was going to leave it there for today. The next step is laying in the lights and the darks on the leaves. And I do that also with acrylic paint. And you'll see that, again, that will be another chance where I can change the shape of the bouquet, and I can change the shape of the leaves, and the flowers. And the bouquet will start to make maybe a little bit more sense, but I can tell you that when we lay in the shadows with acrylic color, the next step when I get it finished, it will be very, very ugly. You won't see all of these strokes, but you will see where the light areas and the dark areas in the bouquet are going to be. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Thanks a bunch for joining me. I appreciate it. And the next session will probably be next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, same time. And at that point, we'll put all the shadows in, and then we'll talk about the following step, which is all of the overstrokes. So that's 2 more sessions, and there'll be a session after that where I will talk to you about border, and I'll design and paint a border on this piece for you. Borders are pretty easy, really, if you just tackle them a little bit at a time, 1 step at a time. They're not difficult, and you're all capable of doing and producing your own border designs without, I mean, I know that. I've taught it to thousands of students, literally thousands, and thousands of them did well. I only ever had 1 student ever that wasn't able to paint borders, and we're not going to talk about that. So I'm going to leave it there for today, and if you've got questions about what happened here and why I did something, or please just leave them in the comments, and I will try and get back to you with an answer. I probably won't do any more on this off camera, but you never know. I'm still looking at the shape and not thrilled. Not sure I can fix it with the shadows, but probably I can. So okay, that's going to be it for today, and again, if you have any questions, let me know, and maybe you can join me next Tuesday is the plan, to do the next step. So bye-bye for now. Have a great week.